Last episode we embedded the lead ingot that was poured to provide ballast into the boat's centerboard. Using a template and router resulted in a close fit so that the lead could be held firmly in place with a few 3/4 inch screws. On this side I used a bit more glue powder than usual so it would not run too far down into the gap. When I glue from the other side, the mix can be runnier and will fill the void between ingot and timber. While the epoxy cured, there was time to shape the stern cap for the transom. An initial template was easy to cut from the existing transom MDF template. My Ryoba saw followed the curve fairly closely. A clamp belt sander got the shape just right before I used that to cut out a stronger ply template. The extra step allowed for 2 pieces of timber to be cut that exactly fit the transom. A quick check and then round the edges on the router table again to prevent future paint failures. The resin cured quickly in the warm weather and was soon ready for the next step. Sawdust from previous sanding and routing makes a serviceable extender for filling and forming fillets.
So that looks pretty good. I made a little bit of a wetter mix than I might normally do for filling holes and so on, just so it's a little bit self-leveling, and you could see that before I was able to just float that a little bit like concrete, so it'll be a bit smoother on top. But this wood dust that I've put in there, it's a little bit coarser than the wood flour that I used last time for easy sanding. The fibres are a little bit stronger like this, they're a little bit longer. So I've just used that as a bulk filler because I've got more of it. The finer the product is, the less of it I've got. So now the other thing that I need to do is just here, there's quite a sharp transition. So I better just put a nice little fillet through there, just so when it comes time to fiberglass this, I've got a nice ramp. Fiberglass just doesn't like going around sharp corners. So yeah, pretty good.
Usually a wooden tongue depressor is my filleting tool of choice, but I'm always open to improvisation.
Okay, so we've returned to this fillet. It's been a few hours later. It's nice and firm. If we have a close look at it, using that wood fibre, the finish is actually quite rough at the moment. That's all right, because in other episodes I talked about your ability to polish epoxy. Once it's nearly cured, you can use, well, in Australia we call it methylated spirits. I think elsewhere it's called denatured spirits, somewhere else around the world. So So that's coming up very nice and glossy, and I can even make sure that the transition at this corner is beautiful and smooth. Starts to get a little bit sticky, just a little bit more methylated spirits. And even here where it's touching into the wood, the transition's a little bit more abrupt than what I would like. So I'll just polish that out as well. I want to be able to fiberglass over this without any issues. So any abrupt change of directions sort of going against that. So that looks good. That's a nice fair curve. No voids or anything like that to have to fill up. Very, very smooth surface there. Oh, there's a bit I missed. And I think when you're polishing with methylated spirits like this, the key is a very light touch. I don't know why I'm taking it straight out of the bottle there. The key is a nice light touch, and you literally can just polish it. But that looked pretty terrible before. But when you know that you're going to come back and just touch it up like this, yeah, you don't have to obsess over it too much. Alright, so overnight this cured nice and hard, and it hasn't really taken very much to make that very, very smooth. Also, it was stipulated to make this out of softwood with a leading edge of hardwood for better wear. That means that this entry into the fillet, it's easy just to shape that as well. I don't do a lot of hand sanding. I try and avoid that, just because it's easy to sort of make low spots and things like that. I prefer to use a block, but every now and then it's definitely got its place. Over here, there's a little bit of resin that's bulged out, and I've got a bit of a plan for that. Something I've used in refits in the past, another tool on the multi-tool to deal with resin. In the past, when I've been doing refits on other boats, I've discovered that these tools, it's like a diamond tip tool for taking grout out between tiles that goes on a multi-tool. I found they're really, really great for dealing with that stuff. They've got a nice tip, they've got a side, and they've got a flat area. So they're almost made for this sort of thing. I also like having a multi-tool where you don't need a tool to change it over. Don't take this as an endorsement of Milwaukee tools. I own one, but I'm not affiliated with them in any way, shape or form. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm gently hand sanding this stuff, I'll do without a dust mask, but I think with a machine, I'll generally put one on. Alright, let's have a look. So that made very, very quick work of that hard resin. Like it just chews through it, so you do have to be careful. And the rest I can sand, but like that would have taken me a long, long time with sandpaper to deal with that. So once again, just those tools, pretty freely available everywhere. They're diamond tip and they're just a grout removing tool. Now again, I don't want to spend hours and hours on getting this exactly right, because this is a centerboard, so it's either going to be under the water or up in its centerboard case. Every now and then it'll be up out of the water if I capsize the boat, but people will be distracted by other things going on and they won't look too closely at my centerboard. All I'm really trying to achieve is nice smooth transitions in every direction, so I don't have a hassle when I'm fiberglassing. This is not so much for aesthetics, even though it will look nice in the end if I do it right, because what is good looks good. But I don't have to go too mad. No one's going to be inspecting this too closely.
It would probably make my long-suffering high school maths teacher happy to know that her lessons on bisecting lines to find the centre of a circle are still remembered somewhere today.
All right, this looks really, really great. Light patches is where the sander was able to hit it, and obviously dark patches is where it's a little bit lower, so it's lower than the rest of the surface. It needs another coat. We'll mix up some of the finer dust so it sands up better. Everything else is really nice. The machine is just taking everything just perfectly off. I can feel it. The fiberglass should transition over those curves really nicely. It feels, it feels nice if nothing else. The other side is still ugly, so what I'm going to do is just get everything exactly ready, and then I'll flip it over and do the other side. We're getting close to getting this ready to glass. That little hole, later on, that little hole that I worked out and just drilled as a placeholder, we are going to have to get that up on the drill press and actually drill that out for a 20mm hole. So I just want to mark that now so I can sand it, because the sander's never going to get rid of that little 2mm drill hole. All right, I'll mix up a bit more epoxy and get that done. Okay, just as a quick aside, I keep talking about the two different sawdusts that I use. So this is the one that I prefer for nice smooth fillets, and when I sand it, it has a very smooth finish, and that's because the particle size is very, very small. So this is the stuff that I got out of my belt sander. It's actually finer than flour. It's like talcum powder, but it is made of wood. So cellulose, so it's fairly strong. That's the one I like for my nice smooth fillets and when I want the finished product. This other one came out of the router, so I ran it through a screen, then I ran it through a sieve. It is a bit coarser, but because the fibres are longer, it's a bit stronger. I get lots of it, so this is the one I use for the bulk, and that's the one I use for my fillets and the finished product when I want to sand it. At the moment in the cold weather, this will take a fair while to go off, and that's why I am making this really, quite a thick paste, because I want it to hold its integrity. I don't want it to level out too much. I normally try and be fairly conservative with my resin and not use more than absolutely necessary. But on this one, I'm going to leave it just a little bit proud, have a bit more sanding just so I only have to do the job once. So, by referencing this side here, I know that it's a little bit, it's going to be sitting a little bit proud, but that's all right. That looks pretty good. So this should be the final time I need to deal with this, and that'll disappear that, so that's pretty good. What I can do though is just go and make sure that any that's sitting on the wood that doesn't need to be there, I can just whip that off. So I've just been getting some sandpaper. I don't really try and save money on sandpaper by buying cheap sandpaper, and particularly with my random orbital, it's got dust extraction built into it, so it's worth buying the things with the holes already in there. This stuff's not cheap. It's $13 for 5 of these for my 6-inch orbital. It might seem expensive, but this better sandpaper, it lasts longer. The glue's quality, the abrasives is quality. If you buy cheap stuff, you're always changing them. These ones tend to last pretty well. Where I can save a little bit of money is on my detail sander, which I use quite a bit. It doesn't have any dust extraction, so I can just go and buy these Velcro backed large sanding discs, and like I can just trace out the pattern of those and cut them out. I do like the little detail pad that came with the multi-tool, just because it's not raised on the back, which means, and what I mean is, if we look at that one compared to that one, see this has got the little star lock on the back of it. They're all much of a muchness, they're all the same size, but that one being flat means I can use it as a tracing template pretty well. So there we go, that's pretty good. These 300mm discs, the blank fits it very well like that, the curve of those edges. they fit in there pretty nicely. There is a little bit of waste. You can get a little half one out there if you're just planning on using the nose for detailing. You don't have to waste that little section there. That's not too bad. That's cheaper than buying them ready-made. It might seem that your sweetheart's dressmaking shears would be perfect for cutting that out, that abrasive grit. That is a mistake. So if you're a romantic person, you'll use your Stanley knife instead of those dressmaking shears. How do you know that, Troy? All right, looks really good. That's that epoxy is curing well, so it's touch dry at the moment, which is great because we do have one more job to do on this before we can go forward, and that is to add a lifting point. Now, if we look at the plans, it says to add a metal strap and a shackle. If it's not clear, it's here. Okay, so the lifting point would be like that. There's the pivot point, so it would come around. You need a lifting point on a centerboard, because it's hanging down, you're coming into shore, you want to lift it up. Obviously you can just run into the beach and it'll flick up anyway, but it might be nicer to be able to do it in a controlled fashion. So instead of a metal strap, I'm not deviating too much from the plans most of the time, but instead of a metal strap, I thought I might use some 6mm Dyneema. So this is left over from when we did our refit of our 30-foot boat. I was super impressed by the strength of Dyneema for its weight and also its abrasion resistance. We crossed the bight and then tooled around in our boat for another year. I didn't see a little abrasion. I saw no abrasion damage whatsoever. So I think it's just the material for this job. Instead of routing out a big section and putting the metal strap, all we need to do is route a groove with a hole that this can go through, and I can make a lifting point there. People that know about Dyneema will be saying that is like way overkill. Dyneema is so super strong, but 6mm I happen to have it, and also it's nice and big, like for my hands to splice. I don't want to go smaller. So we'll have Dyneema to, like a certain point, and then we'll carry on with just some cheaper rope through a block and tackle or whatever. I don't know yet, but we do need to sort that lifting point out. To make the groove, I just happen to have a 6.4mm core box bit. So all that does is it just cuts a nice groove in timber. The blade is curved all the way around. It's not straight up and down like all the other bits that we've used so far. So I can set it up, a set distance, do my groove, drill a hole, throw that through. No big deal. About there looks pretty good. So I want to just pick up the middle of this lamel here for my groove. Pretty close to 20mm. Why don't we just, there we go. There's a 0. So when I get to this point, I want that bit to be 6mm deep, just a bit over. So why don't we just bring that up there. And we're going to stage that cut. Nice. All right. Okay, that looks perfect. It's going to sit just below the surface there. Lovely. So a very, very straightforward job. All I need to do now is flip it over. This is all set. Measure in 100 mil, exactly like this, for where my starting point is, and route the other side. A very straightforward job, but the only complication is this reference face has to be square. Okay, if that's not square, this groove is going to be a little bit different on both sides, and when you drill, you're going to have a hole it won't line up. So that's what we'll do. And just to absolutely make sure, you know what I'll do is when it comes time, I'll hit that with the drill press from this side and then from the other side. So they're definitely in the groove. And if there is any just misalignments, the drill bits will still meet, and I'll be able to use a rat tail file to make sure that they join and make sure that things are smooth in there. But that's a pretty pessimistic outlook, isn't it? Anyway, we'll get it done because it's nearly dinner time for me. Okay, that looks great. Oh, it's some nice bird song as well. I've been missing out on it while I've been sanding. It looks really good. It's totally in line with that convex surface. Nice and smooth. I could have actually done that quicker with a belt sander, but because belt sanders remove so much stock, I thought I'd just go with the random orbital. It still only took me a couple of minutes. It was really quite quick. This filler is nice and hard, but it sands beautifully. It's interesting. The finer grain filler that I've used is this light coloured puddle, and the coarser one is dark there. When I look at it, not with my naked eye, but once I get glasses, when I look at it, there is a few tiny little pinholes in the coarser one, but they're very, very small, and when I come to fiberglass that, the resin will absolutely fill those up. So I'm done with that. For the rest of it, I'm just going to sand this off camera so I don't bore you to death, and then I will flip the other side, and hopefully when I get back to you, we can go on with some fiberglassing. I need to fiberglass this, and I need to fiberglass the inside of the center board case before I can put them all together. So I think I've hit all my KPIs. We looked at a couple of different types of filler, using them. I made a ridiculously big fillet there. I even got my router out, so there you go. I can't do an episode without using a router. The multi-tool, we had a look at that little grout bit. Very, very handy thing if you're doing some fiberglassing. You can even like trim bits when you actually have glass. We'll get to that once I actually start mucking around with fiberglass. So thank you for joining me once again. I really appreciate you use some of your precious time to spend it with me. Thank you for everyone that supports us with the comments, with the thumbs up, and most importantly, those people that do send us a little bit of cha-ching. It all helps. It keeps us doing what we do, bring you these videos. It takes a lot of work, and we really, really appreciate it. All right, see you next time. Hopefully we'll get the fiberglass and resin out.